meeting to order at 6:40. Any agenda amendments?
Well, I would just state that because we don't have an official quorum, that we would not do the approval of the minutes, and the discussion about administrative contracts and even to go in executive session would require action. We would put those off till the next meeting.
Okay. Sounds fine. Any correspondence or items for future agendas and public comments be brought here tonight? Hearing none, and we'll pass over the approval of the January 2nd board meeting minutes. Go on to fiscal and the review of the Franklin Northwest budgets.
So, and I just pushed my notes away from me, Bessie. Thank you for organizing the notes, and then I push them away. No, I've got them. So, what you're looking at are central office, early childhood, and special ed drafts. We have added some things. These are not things that we are necessarily going to keep. We've been having discussions and talking about, well, if, you know, as opportunities come and go, whether we should add something or move something. So it's certainly not final, but I would like to just start and go through some of the shifts. And again, right now, we do not have Sheldon in this budget, and it, in any of these budgets, correct, Becky?
Right.
And we are, as of today, looking at possible merged budget when we're looking at these expense items. So, in central office,
That's the green copy.
There are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight in terms of salary. We had somebody leave who was doing a position that was part sort of data and tech support and part support for special education. And given the challenges that we've had with the SLDS system and the fact that every one of our wonderful registrars and school secretaries all do things differently, and nothing is really centrally managed, we really talked about needing a data analyst position, no matter what it's called, that would coordinate those kinds of services. Now, again, in a merged budget, we don't know whether that would be additional money or something that could be reallocated. We don't know. But it is in here as an increase, but a lot depends on how things shake out. So there was that increase. There was also some support. We had someone who's been a volunteer, and we have the cost of 1 day a week of their, now that they're not volunteering. That also is something that would be up for discussion in the future, but that is in there. Is there any other central office changes, except for insurance increases?
Right, yeah, we will continue to update as people come on for the insurance or come off the insurance. So just trying to keep things up to date. We haven't looked at these budgets since December.
Right.
So we did pick up 2 additional staff members taking the health insurance. The data analyst position is under the technology category on that green page. And the volunteer that will be working 1 day a week would be under the HR category on the back side of that green page. So what we're talking about.
Well, also in here, you did add the ESL position in.
Oh, yes.
Also,
this category is on its own.
we have,
It's on the first side down the bottom.
yes. So our ESL teacher position has been here for
At least 10 years.
a very long time. It has never actually been in the central office budget. It has just been assessed to each of the individual budgets. And so I really have been, just like we've been doing in the local budgets, trying to show a true expenditure budget. It's truly a central position. The person has an SU contract, so we put it in here. So obviously that results in an increase.
Can I ask about the data analyst position? Is it being advertised or has it been filled?
Not now.
Not yet?
No, not, this is all for next year, and without a budget, I'm really scrutinizing every new hire. So if there are vacancies, we're gonna be looking very closely about whether we need to fill those vacancies now or whether we can wait until a budget passes now. So a position like this, that could easily, either there could be an internal person who wants to take on the work
Right.
and we reallocate some of the other people's work.
Sure.
Or an internal person applies for it and, you know, so there are a lot of options. It may not actually result in an increase in
Okay.
cost, depending on a merged budget or not and who's interested in the work. But the position itself, I think, is very important, given how the expectations of data and the accuracy of data and everything that relies upon it. In such a large system, I think it's important that we have someone that's on top of that. And it's really outside of what a tech director does,
Right.
though he's certainly been doing it this year. But-
Also, I think it's important to know about the longitudinal data.
Yes.
That's all got centralized from the state. So before, like there was some jobs that the registrars did, and there was even a couple things I did, when no longer can any of us do it because it's all in one big, huge data system that only one person can do, which right now is our technology director. So that's what's really changed a
Yes.
lot. It's not just, you know, that we want somebody centralized, but that, the state has
Right.
made a big change that has made it different how we can collect the data.
It may very well be that we take certain responsibilities off other people and their roles and then reallocate work there. We may be able to do, but it's really too early for us to engage in that kind of conversation without knowing whether we're really merged or not.
Right.
But that's one of the things that was put in as a possibility. We want to move to early childhood, or is that, okay, or are people still looking at the first one?
I just was curious, under superintendent's office, you knew in 2020, you say wages now reflect superintendent and executive assistant position, which is previously budgeted under HR admin assistant. So I'm assuming that variance that we're seeing there is largely a result of that.
Yes.
So there isn't a corresponding decrease under the human resources admin support salary and wages. Did we add a position?
We repurposed fiscal service money, so you'll see a $70,000 decrease or close to that under fiscal.
Okay.
Because we had, I think this time last year, or a little earlier, had actually brought you a whole proposal of adding, you know, centralizing the bookkeeping. We hired one less person fiscally and moved that into the executive assistant for superintendent, because that was needed.
Becky, this 11.8% increase, I mean, I've been hearing it for years. I mean, is that norm? I mean, as far as, that's a big increase.
It is, and I think when they changed all their plans, they did not increase it enough. I think they're catching up now. So we saw a big decrease going into last year, when we did change the plans. And I think they found that was not enough money. So I'm hoping we don't see this every year now.
Right.
I'm hoping that they've gotten themselves caught up, but health insurance, exactly.
Yeah, it's not sustainable at that growth.
That's where the
No.
money is, insurance.
I mean, as much as we don't like the idea of the state, negotiating on our behalf, maybe it will help with the increase. I don't know. It adds some stability to the system.
We've had years where it's gone up 0.4%, I'm sure
Right,
you
yeah, I
remember
remember
those, and
Yeah.
it's hard to gauge sometimes.
And don't forget that ESL position that was never anywhere.
Right.
Is in here now,
Yeah.
and it's not even, it's a teacher. You know, that, because there's no man's land to put that teacher in, but they don't really belong in the central office, so
Yeah.
that's another part of the increase that you're seeing.
True.
Well, there's really no SU budget that has general ed teachers, or in this case, a more specialized direct instruction.
Yeah.
It doesn't really belong in, it doesn't belong in early ed, doesn't belong in special ed, so central office kind of was the last man standing.
Yeah.
In a completely merged budget, it would be in, do they have
Instructional.
code for
I think it has
ESL?
its own
It has its own
category, yeah, I think
category,
function
so
code, they call it.
just be a part under instruction in its own category.
It is what it is.
Any other questions under the central office portion?
Mm-hmm.
If none, let's move on to early childhood.
Nothing too much.
So there is not a lot of change since last time. As you know, we've made adjustments because of the loss of the preschool expansion grant. So we've already cut a classroom in paras. We've, to offset the early childhood director position, we have increased our use of IDAB fund, grant fund, which is not a long-term solution, but it's a short-term solution. And
We did reduce the tuition that we're paying out to daycare providers. I think in the last draft, we had deducted, I think, an estimated of 5 students for Sheldon, because this is I don't have Sheldon in it. There's actually currently 12, I believe, students, so we've reduced it by 10 and left so it's a difference of 5 of what you saw previously, so we've made that reduction. We had a couple staff members that went on to the health insurance.
Yeah.
The big thing is the Triple E grant, which goes to all 4 schools currently. I had maintained that same figure that we have this year, but with Sheldon not being in here, that is about 50,000 that will come out of that grant, and it increased the expense somewhat.
Right.
so that's essentially the only changes in the early childhood budget at this point.
Under what line, the change in the tuition number?
It's in the first box.
First box?
It's part of other services. It's 174,000 that's showing there.
Okay,
So the bulk of that is the tuition.
Okay,
There's
thank you.
Travel and some other things in there, but.
But it's
Thank you.
mostly tuition, which is just under $4,000 a child.
The note does say we're budgeting 55 students, and it should be 50. Just didn't catch that before I printed them.
I think tuition, at this point, besides health insurance, tuition is the biggest driver.
There been any more talk about that at the legislative level?
Yes, though I don't believe any bills are out of committee at this point. But there are a couple of ideas. Andrea can probably speak to them better when she does an update. But one of them is that 3-year-old services would belong to Agency of Human Services, and 4-year-olds would be part of school, sort of like the new kindergarten, if you will. It's, what I've heard is so preliminary, I can't speak to it with any specificity that makes me comfortable. I do know that in those scenarios, you know, if they pay, if the Agency of Human Services pays for those kids, we don't count those students in our average daily membership. So, but if we don't have to pay or provide oversight, it's probably a fair exchange. There are other scenarios out there that try and solve some of the problems differently. I don't know that any of them that I've heard are really comprehensive in addressing the issues that schools are seeing, because we certainly continue to have a lot of advocacy in the state for private providers. And I certainly support our private providers, but I do struggle with the ed fund supporting private providers in all circumstances. So there's a lot of work to be done.
It seems like it's the only grade level that has that provision where we have to provide services and also provide tuition if they choose
Right.
not to use the services we're providing.
It's kind of like high school tuition for a choice district, but you also happen to run a high school. You have to do both things. Yeah.
I can see that in the insurance expense through this budget, basically is a wash, it's a shuffle. Because if you go from the top to the bottom on insurance and payroll expenses, we've got 30, then minus 33, plus 4, minus 18, minus 23. So it's not, insurance isn't really a heavy weight on this budget.
Are we talking about the early ed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of just, it's kind of a shuffle. So in the end, I guess my point is that what we're looking at the salaries under ECP, and that's pretty much it. Right? There's not much of a difference year over year.
Are you looking from year to year?
I thought so.
Keep in mind that for next year, it's without Sheldon.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Right.
I'd like to claim that there's not much of an increase, but we are down a district as well.
True. Yep, I get it.
And just for my own information, because I don't know how this has been working, under the anticipated revenues, the first grant that was listed, that pre-K expansion fund, why was this grant money started? What is the program? Where were those funds coming from now? Why have they been shut off?
Well, it was a 4-year grant, and this is the 4th year.
From who was the grant from?
This was part of the Race to the Top grant that we got from the federal.
From-
Vermont won the Race to the Top as one of the states, and so one of the programs under the Vermont bid for that was expanding the preschools. So we were offering full-day preschools.
Right.
And so that was 4 years.
And so those funds were coming from both the state and federal, or just the state?
The state won it, so it was coming through the feds and distributed by a department and
Okay.
AOE, yeah.
They because they wanted to expand. They wanted the states,
Full-day
To the
preschool.
full-day.
There was
and so
research
then they
around-
got us to start that, and then now they've taken the funding away, the grant funding away.
We were anticipated to carry it out. The
Right.
idea was, over the 4 years, we were supposed to be building capacity so that we could maintain that. We
Right.
haven't been able to do that.
So it was through their encouragement to start this program, to do this,
Yep.
and then, I just want to make sure that's what had happened.
Yes.
I
yeah.
assume that's
And so
what had
it's-
happened.
The timing is very awkward in that it's coming with all this merged stuff, so
Right.
it's really hard to
Yeah.
juggle that.
Well, it's just, this is something that the legislature and the executive branch and my peers say, you want schools to do these things.
Right.
You provide some money to get started, and then you're wondering why it's costing more for us for education. Why are our budgets going up? It's because of,
Right.
and so
one of-
these are some
yeah.
great points to point out to them in case they've forgotten.
Yeah.
And I'm just,
No, I totally.
you
yes,
understand where, I hope you
yeah.
understand where I'm coming
And
from.
last year, we were at the legislature trying to advocate that if we were providing full day, that we get actually 1.0 ADM drawdown, because we were still only getting half
Right.
a part-time
Right.
refund, even though we were offering full-time services.
Yeah.
And that didn't go through. So we were trying to show them in anticipation of the fact that if you're gonna have us take this on, we need to anticipate
Right.
getting the same as a full-time kindergarten gets, and it didn't really
Right.
pass. So we've been struggling.
Yeah, that was
No,
really
no,
our hope.
thank you.
Yeah.
I assumed that's what it was, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask that, so.
Yeah.
That really
Thank
was
you.
our hope, John, that over the 4 years, and as the universal pre-K law was coming out, that we were finally getting ADM for students that we were serving, that we would end up being able to get full-time ADM for full-time kids. And while it's still an expenditure increase, it would help our tax rates, and that we would then become sustainable.
Yeah.
And that, I know some schools have been able to find the space in their building, and they've been able to do that. But again, at what cost? Because they're not getting the incentive of being able to count the pupils.
Right.
So,
And part of the current conversation that we're trying to advocate for is some sort of understanding that it's really hard for a school district to project the tuition budget when kids who turn that age in the middle of the school year then start their enrollment, and so all of a sudden we have to add another tuition. And somehow, is it possible to just have that go by the school year so that we can anticipate what the numbers are? Because as it is now, it's a rolling thing.
Okay.
So at the beginning of the year, what we're budgeting for now, it could be irrelevant because kids are gonna turn that age and then apply, and then we have to honor it.
Right.
So that's a frustration we're trying to
Right.
figure out.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
so in terms of special education, which is purple, school-based staff wages and benefits have been updated. Out-of-district placement costs have increased based on higher numbers of kids being placed, so that's a number that is, as we present new budgets to you, we're gonna make it as accurate and current as possible. That number is always shifting. OT and PT expenses increased as the SU moved from contracting services to employing folks. And change of service delivery, those are funded through IDAB, and offsetting revenues are increased. So they're showing as an increase in the expenditure, but they're also an increase in the revenue expense there. There has been a position that was part-time. We talked a little bit before about the did it again. Data analyst position. So we did add a little here to the special ed for the admin assistant there. Again, I don't know if we would actually end up with that cost or whether we would make some internal changes with existing folks. Not that I would talk too much on camera about that, but I think we may have the capacity to, the person is needed. The director of special education doesn't have any administrative assistant support at all. So she doesn't need a ton. She hasn't had any, but she does need some.
But you'd like it.
It would be helpful. But again, we want to be, oh goodness gracious. My godmother is calling me. I apologize. So again, that's something that as we get closer to finalizing and putting together either a merged budget or relooking at the SU budget because we're doing locals, we'd be relooking at some of those. I think that was it for the changes in special ed.
This one has a lot of variances.
It always is.
I know. But, I mean, they're big variances that we overshot or undershot. I mean, it looks like the revenue side here, 154 versus 377. But if you go up a couple of lines, you go from 279 to 381, so.
That 377 is the updated carryover coming out of last year.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of the variances in salaries and benefits have to do with Sheldon coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sheldon has 5 special educators and 2 SLPs. So that would be a large difference.
Yeah.
Should Sheldon go to Franklin Northeast, those employees are SU employees, so they have an option of staying with us, or whatever the process would be in Sheldon, going to Sheldon. So we're working through those with individual employees.
I have a question on that. This is all hypothetical. Say all of the Sheldon teachers wanted to stay in this SU. We don't have room for that many with the loss of the school, right?
Right.
So how does that shake out?
So if you're talking about just the SU employees, so let's just, since we're doing special ed, let's just talk about special ed. There are other like grant kind of positions, but it's primarily special ed. Say there were 7 of them, and we did not have 7 vacancies. So there are a number of positions. Special ed is one of those high turnover,
Yeah.
hard to fill positions. So there's always attrition.
Mhm.
Attrition is your friend.
Mhm.
So, you always use that as an opportunity. But people's licenses, say all the vacancies are at the high school and people's licenses are for elementary, they wouldn't necessarily be eligible for those slots or want them. So people, because they are SU employees, they would have bumping rights.
Okay.
And we would have to follow a process. Hopefully, we won't have to disrupt people's employment.
Right, I mean, once everything
Yeah.
actually shakes out for real, some people stay, some people leave, but it might work out fine. I was just curious if it went to one extreme, how that worked.
Absolutely, yep. Tourette, is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Usually we find that is one area where there's usually a fairly large turnover. So, our hope would be through attrition that we probably would find positions for most everyone that wanted to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions on any of the budgets presented, discussed tonight?
Hopefully next month, we definitely will know which way we're going, and we'll be looking at things a little differently.
Okay, very good, thank you. On to the superintendent's report.
So, let's see, what do we got? So, we're gonna talk about the updates with Act 46 later, so I won't start with that. Here I do have a picture, that's the Sheldon gym, that now that the bond has passed in Sheldon, congratulations to Sheldon. And also congratulations to Highgate, and thank you to both communities for supporting those very important bonds, because both schools have a lot of work that needs to be done. And I know I wasn't able to go to the Highgate meeting, but I attended the Sheldon meeting, and we were sitting in the gym with the big crack in the floor, and people took notice of the work and care that needs to go into the school, and they voted accordingly, so it was very much appreciated. That is the gym, and we were there on the 19th of February. Joanna Jarose organized, and her students ran a parent and community evening to talk about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And that's a survey that's done by students, I'm gonna get it wrong, but they're at least middle through high school age students. And they ask a lot of questions about their behaviors. And the students actually took the information, they spent a day at the Abbey, I think, analyzed the results of the SU versus the state, and what students' attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs are about alcohol, substance, sex, other kinds of at-risk abuse, other kinds of things. And they identified the top 3 issues. They presented them to the parents and community members. We had law enforcement, we had folks from NCSS and NFI and from the hospital and all kinds of organizations, substance abuse counselors, and parents, and the students led the discussions. We looked at data together. They had tabletop discussions about topics. One of the biggest ones that was addressed was a large percentage of students identified that alcohol is really easy to get. Really easy to get. And we had discussions at our table about that, and what some of the causes would be. And law enforcement agreed that it's not at the stores that it's easy to get. It's in your homes, and it's in the neighbors' homes, and the cousins that don't have kids and aren't thinking about those things. So it's very easy or at least the perception is that it's very easy. And so we talked about what are things that we can do to inform parents, to wrap around as community members, to really think about access. Because a lot of times families don't think about the fact that they have access to alcohol in their homes when kids are 10 years old. But that's actually when you have to start thinking about those kinds of things. So it was a very interesting evening, and it was very well attended, and the students facilitated the whole thing. It was absolutely fabulous. And they were talking about some very serious issues, so it was very impressive. The other thing I wanted to talk to that's related is we're having, I don't know why I scroll up there, you can't see it. Maybe it's just me. We have a guest coming to Vermont from Chile, Dr. Humberto Soriano, and he is the president of Scientific Societies for Prevention in Chile, and is a pediatrician, was president of the Chilean Society of Pediatrics. He's been invited to Vermont by the Vermont After School Program. He's speaking at UVM. He will be here for a couple of hours on Monday the 18th. And his topic is something called the Icelandic model of prevention. And I have a little link to a video. I don't know that we need to show it. If you want to see it, that's fine. It's only like 3.5 minutes long. But it is something that Iceland did, an approach to serious drug and alcohol issues that they had about 20 years ago, and how the entire community came together, and of course how they invested municipal funds, how they had curfews, how they created after-school programs for kids, and how now they have the lowest substance abuse in Europe. And so this doctor is going to be coming and speaking about how they've taken this model and implemented it in Chile. So I thought it was a great opportunity to let people know about this model. It certainly does support the after-school work that we all do in our schools. How I think we all intuitively know busy kids are safer kids when they're in our buildings. It's often a lot better than when they're just hanging out. But it's very interesting, and I think we're hearing more and more about this particular model in cities and towns. It's not a school thing, it's a whole community approach. So I thought I would highlight that. And if folks ever are interested, the link is in the newsletter. I'd be happy to email it too. We just send the newsletter out as a PDF.
And where is he going to be presenting through the day, or is he going to be moving
Well, it's
around
all over.
or-
Yeah, he's going to be moving all over. He'll be here for about an hour and a half. I believe we're going to have the after school, the Crossroads Advisory Council, which is principals, some parents, other community members, folks from various community organizations will be invited as well. To hear him speak, and then he's going to be doing a big presentation at UVM.
By here, do you mean here at this elementary school, or
No, I
VU,
think
or
central office.
central office?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just thought I would highlight that as and it's an opportunity to show off the work that we do in our school.
And then you said he's going to be going on and presenting at UVM in the evening?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Yes. Okay.
If anyone is interested, just send me an email and I can send you what the schedule looks like.
His presentation that's done here, will it be videotaped? Is that something he would allow?
He's not doing a presentation.
Oh, he's not doing a
No, it's a
presentation, okay.
dialogue.
Oh,
and
dialogue,
We're
okay.
sharing
All
what
right.
we do here and asking
Right.
questions about their
Right.
implementation. But there is a lot of very good results. Again, when well, I'm happy to show the video if you want to see it. It's not him, but it's
No, I was just curious about what and who's bringing who's bringing him here to this area or to Vermont?
It's the Vermont After School Program, so they support after-school programs all over Vermont.
Right,
So as an organization, they're bringing, because it's,
okay. I was just wondering how he
Yeah.
happened to be coming here as well.
that's about as much
so.
as I know about it.
Well, that's fine.
But it's very.
I didn't think Franklin
Yeah.
Northwest said, hey, we'd like you to come.
No.
So I was just curious
Send
who,
them an invitation.
yeah. Very good.
Be other towns coming to listen to him, or?
Well, I believe that Franklin Northeast is also invited to this stop. So it's something that we're not organizing.
Okay,
The Vermont After School Program Association is organizing the trip, and we're one of the stops.
you're providing the venue.
And we're
for it.
providing the
Right,
venue,
okay.
yep. So if, at this point, I'd like to throw it out to you'll see next, Robert's not here, but you'll see when you get, I didn't have time to have this sent to you, my apologies, it'll be sent to you afterwards. Robert gave an update about last month, there was a week of coding in the elementary schools, and Franklin had students, actually George Raynack came and worked with kids directly with Kathy Ovitt, and they had activities for all the students in coding and technology. Swanton also had every student participate in an hour of code, and they used a variety of programs. Things like code carts for the kindergartners and codecombat.com for the 6th grade students, so they differentiated it up through the grades, and students had opportunities to do that. And in Sheldon, students were doing it with Yeshua, their tech teacher, and also in the library. And then some of the classroom teachers also built upon those lessons and did them in classrooms too. So it was great. It's a great opportunity for kids to learn how coding works, how technology works, and practice their problem solving. I'd like to have Kosha go next and talk about her update.
Sure. So one of the things we've really been focusing on in our supervisory union is looking at data and making decisions based on the data we're collecting from our students. So on February 4th, we had a half-day in-service, and in all the schools, teachers were looking at their current data in literacy, math, and also in social emotional behavior. And so the pictures you see are the various teams of teachers looking at data with their team, and then they came together as a whole school staff and really identified trends. So what are they seeing as school-wide trends? What are they seeing as some needs? And that's going to be used for our continuous improvement plans that we write for next year. We also had UA's meeting, so we had PE teachers meeting and guidance people and music teachers. So it was wonderful to be able to see people having dialogue with what's going on in their school, and then what are some things we have in common. The PE teachers met to really talk about the new PE assessment that's come out from the state, and one of our new requirements is for students with intensive needs, special needs. And so our physical therapist from Franklin Northwest was there, as well as special educators dealing with the students with intensive needs, so that they could talk to the PE teachers about what those needs are in order to plan for that. Andrea facilitated a really good dialogue with all our guidance people in terms of what are we doing in our schools and what are some needs to deal with those different tiers of instruction. So that was excellent. Tanya helped facilitate the PE teachers meeting and really talk about it. She also visited the school psychologists who were having discussions about things that they felt were critical. The music teachers were really talking about the new proficiency scales that they've come up with and the curriculum. So this kind of dialogue is going on throughout the SU, and we are having another in-service as a follow-up on March 15th, which is next week. And they're going to continue to finish or complete the analysis that they started with their data. So some of them really look more closely at the math data, and now they're going to look at literacy data. But this is going to be really helpful for us because if you just scroll down to where we talk about the continuous improvement. So one of the things we are required to do from the Agency of Ed is to write a continuous improvement plan. So there is a plan that the supervisory union creates in terms of our educational quality standards, like what do we want to do to improve academic proficiency, what do we want to do to improve safe and healthy schools, our MTSS system, all those things. So under the umbrella of the supervisory union's continuous improvement plan, each school then creates their plan. So there might be, say for example, in social emotional learning, some schools decided to really work on restorative practices, some are working on trauma-based instruction. So depending on what their needs are specifically in the building, they are making adjustments to that. So there is the whole supervisory union plan, and then there's a plan for each building. So this year we were required just to look at the plans we submitted last spring and look at our data and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change, what do we need to keep doing, because it's really showing a difference in our data. So that's the work that all the buildings have been doing. I'll be working with each of the continuous improvement teams in each building to look at and really reflect on, this was our plan last year, this is what we put into place, and what are the things we want to retain, what are some things that our data showing really not working or not making a difference, so we get rid of that and then add some new strategies if needed. What I put there is part of the reason we are asked to write these plans is we get grants from the federal government. We get Title I-A support, we get Title II-A and Title IV-A, which really funds a lot of our intervention in each of our buildings. It also funds a lot of the professional development that we provide our teachers. So we want to make sure that we are providing and using that money in a way that's going to improve our student achievement. So that's the work we've been really focusing on. And then the last thing I put in there is next week we have what is called the integrated field review. And here in Vermont, we always like to do things a little different from other states. So what the Agency of Ed doesn't want to do is judge schools solely on the basis of SBAC scores. So they have started this, it's held every 3 years, and it's called the integrated field review. So they have people from other supervisory unions as well as representatives from the Agency of Ed come and visit our schools. So that's happening next Thursday. So we'll start off in NVU where Julie and I will do a quick introduction of our central office administration, and we'll do a quick overview of all the 5 schools in our SU. And then this group of 19 people gets deployed in like 3s and 4s to each of the schools. They'll be doing classroom observations, they'll be interviewing parents, they'll be interviewing students, they'll be interviewing staff members. Students will take them on a tour of the building, and they'll also be interviewing administrators in each building. And what they will do at the end of it is this team of 19 people goes back to MVU in the afternoon, and based on all their observations, they're going to give us commendations, what they're seeing we're doing well, and what they feel that they might give some recommendations. So in Vermont, they're using the integrated field review as well as SPAC scores, as well as the annual snapshot to really make their analysis of each school and each supervisory union. So we've been busy trying to organize that, right from parking and Wi-Fi passwords to everything to make sure it goes really smoothly. And principals have been working really hard on creating a schedule getting parents and teachers and everybody on the interview committees. So that's happening next week on Thursday.
Wow.
I can't believe it's next week.
Yeah.
And I have to think Kosha has been taking the lead on this all year, ever since they told us this was gonna be happening, and, she's going to do a refresher boot camp for those of us who are gonna be going on, visits to other schools, so that can remind us of what we're supposed to look for and how we're supposed to work on things. So she's organized all of it amazingly well,
Yeah.
so, thank you.
Cool.
You're welcome. And the supervisory unions who are going to be represented when they visit us is Franklin Northeast, Maple Run, and Milton. And so we will be going in, we have a team of 12, so we'll be going to these different supervisory unions and doing the same thing for them. So it's like a peer review, it's your peers us looking at what you're doing rather than just the agency of education. So that's happening next week.
Tanya, do you have some updates for us next?
I'm just trying to think what will make more sense. There's so many little pieces. I think one of the things I just wanted to update everyone on is, you know, Kosha has mentioned the SEL piece, and I think one of the social emotional learning component of what we're working on SU-wide. And so Kosha and Andre and I have worked together to really identify, and with principals have identified as well, the need for us to really focus. And I think last year we came to you all and said we wanted to hire a social emotional learning coordinator, and that didn't pan out. But we are continuing to plug away at this idea that we need to be able to articulate what it is we mean when we say all students have these certain set of social emotional learning skills, and what that means in our buildings. And so the three of us have been working on pushing forward that work around what is it that we're talking about, what are our schools doing around it in various settings. But then obviously it'll trickle up or down, whichever way you wanna look at it, right? So one of the projects this year in particular that I think I had talked about way early on was that we were trying to increase the capacity of our school, and particularly MBU, to meet the needs of students with more challenging behaviors, or folks that just needed some more of that level of support, versus having to rely so heavily on some of the out-of-district placements. And I think that was a conversation last year, and so a lot of the work and the goal going into this year was that we would beef up our alternative program. And I think you all remember that we had really no luck hiring a mental health clinician for that program, and we have a vacant special ed position in that program. So it has felt like, we haven't really gotten that off the ground yet, and we have staff members in that program that are working very hard and have done additional training this year. Went to a training in Massachusetts around the collaborative problem-solving model to really work with students with challenging behaviors. And the program assistants in that program have been doing some trauma-informed training with Joelle Van Lent throughout the last few months. So the staff that is there are really working to build their skills, and we are super, super hopeful that we will end up getting that clinician to that program and special educator that can work with that team. And in doing so, we can identify that we would be able to house or to bring back into our own schools some students that are out. So I throw that out there because I think when we look at these budgets sometimes and we say, oh, our out-of-district costs, right, that continues to be hard to look at. And I want you all to know that we're continuing to look at that from every level of our pyramid, right? From the basic tier 1 that we're doing in terms of what's happening in the classroom for all students, all the way up to our alternative program where we're continuing to build that skill set, and just keeping our fingers crossed that we can really just settle at some point on a solid, and get the people in those positions that we need, and I think we're getting there. So we haven't given up hope, even though that program isn't quite where we wanted it yet, just giving staffing availability, but we're getting there. So I guess that would be my big update, connected to that SEL and connected to the budget really, and where we're headed with that.
Yeah.
And so the meeting that I moderated for the data thing was with the guidance counselors, and that was also super exciting because it was the first time that they were able to see the scope of what happens from preschool through 12th grade. And so hearing what each other is doing, the middle school, hearing what elementary is doing, and honestly, not everybody knew what preschool was doing. So it was really, exciting for me to be there and explain all the initiatives that were going on at the younger age. And so what we're gonna continue to talk about is how do we make sure there is this continuum, and that the work that is started in early ed, because that is really the focus of our curriculum, how does that get continued? Where are the gaps? How do we make sure that the transitions between buildings jumping into MBU happen, jumping from pre-K to K happen? And there are some tools that we have started using in preschool that are valid up through K1, 2, 3. And so trying to just unpack some of those and see if those are tools that would be useful to have a continuum of data so that it could go up to age 8 or higher. So those were some just really exciting conversations that we were having. Other early ed stuff?
Yes, go right.
Were you done? I jumped right in
No,
on
I
that.
think
Sorry.
nope,
It
it's good,
excites
it's
me.
all good. It's all-
Yeah, we have been working as a team to try and have that coming from all of us, so it's really exciting. Just the other kind of focus points for early ed as we look towards the future, how are we juggling the not merger situation? What do we do with Sheldon? How do I help Christy manage the preschoolers? How do we know the numbers that are coming in, whether they're gonna be with us or for her, and how to support her with that. I've reached out to Franklin Northeast administration. They have a very different model there, so they don't have an early childhood director. Each principal's in charge of their own preschool classroom, so that means if Sheldon goes there, Christy's going to have to take full ownership over her preschool. So how can I support her in getting ready to do that if she goes that way? I've talked to her about it, I'm taking that on, I don't think that's a detail she needs to think about right now. So for going forward, we've decided that registration and enrollment still is gonna happen through our office, and we're just not gonna add anyone to Power School, we're just gonna keep those files, keep them as paper files, and then when things settle out, we'll either enter them for us, or we'll be able to have Sheldon Elementary ready to go in what they need to enter. So we're still trying to just keep it as smooth as possible and supporting that transition. The other pieces that we need to anticipate are the children who turn 3 that are Sheldon residents, and how, between now and the end of the school year, they also need to be made, those families need to be made aware that if they're rolling into our early intervention, it could be for only 2 or 3 months before then they have to go into a different school district, and we just don't know how that's gonna play out. So we just have to be able to explain to the parents that this is where we're at, it's great. And your services might look this way for a couple months, and then they're gonna shift a little bit. And so just anticipating kind of how we can make that as easy as possible for those family members and those community members. And the only other thing that we're getting ready for is that April is the month of the young child, and so we usually have a Saturday celebration with Big Rig Day and early ed focused stuff here, and it's usually housed here in Swanton, so just keep your eye open for that, because that's a big community thing that we do.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you in particular for just trying to make that already confusing process as easy as possible for the families
Yeah.
who, they don't know what an SU is anyway, never mind how it impacts their child who might have a disability or needs services. And then also supporting our principal, who is sort of in limbo there, so it's very much appreciated. So that is the superintendent's report and central office updates.
Okay. Move on to old business.
The ongoing business. So, Bob, I don't know if you want to give the litigation update?
Well, the latest, which I'm sure everyone has heard by now, is that the judge did issue a ruling on the injunction motion, and that was denied. So we are now moving forward. We're waiting for guidance from the legal team on that kind of dual process and what they recommend on that front. Makes it, doesn't really clear up any confusion for the boards. Kind of makes it more confusing because now we're trying to juggle two different paths. And not what we wanted to hear, but that's where we're at, so.
Sit and wait.
Bob, did you, is there any timeline on when, you know, we knew February 15th was the hearing on the injunction. Is there any idea of when the case itself is gonna be heard, the merits of the case?
I haven't seen any scheduling around that.
But it's all gonna be done by June 30th.
That's their goal. I would be rather surprised if they have a clean and completed case by that point in time. There's a lot to the case to consider, and I think to give it its due process, it's gonna take longer than that. I think that's pretty ambitious timeline to try to get it. The same as it is an ambitious timeline for us to try to complete the imposed merger by July 1.
So speaking of that, the next part of that is the legislative update, and I understand the Senate is taking testimony next week. I know Julia told me that Sheldon has been invited, and you folks said that you were invited also, Bob and Devin, to testify.
That's correct. We haven't got a confirmed date yet. One of two dates were proposed, either the 13th or the 14th. We're waiting for confirmation on which day they're going to want us to give our testimony. So we'll keep you posted on that and how that goes. We were asked to kind of focus on the positive, and we will work on that and provide our testimony about why we feel that a 1-year delay is necessary.
Well, I do know that when we had our organizational meeting on February 20th, Dan French and I were chatting briefly, and he said, well, I told Governor Scott that nobody can merge in 3 months.
Right.
You know, it's just, it's getting, you know, obviously, if you have to do it, you have to do what you do is, you know. But it's just, as we go through this, there's a delay, and then there's another, and then it's getting more and more necessary, I would think, to have a delay.
I don't care which side of the issue you sit on and what your opinion is of the mergers, if you think it's a good idea or you don't think it's a good idea. I think it's necessary. Obviously, if you're against merger, you want the time to fight and make sure that your appeal gets its due consideration. If you're pro-merger, you want this to be a success story, and you want people to do this in a thoughtful and well-planned out method that works for everybody, and to try to have people do that in the timeline that they've laid out is just, they're setting themselves up for a failure, and it's going to be the kids that suffer for that. And I think we need to, like I say, doesn't matter where you sit on the issue. It's necessary.
Since the start.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to hear what you all and the Sheldon folks and anyone else that goes and testifies has to say about the sort of reaction of the Ed Committee, Senate Ed Committee, because they seem to have been reticent to talk about it at all. So, you know.
I think there's a hesitance there based on the fear that there'll be reprisals from communities that merged under what they might view as duress, where they were basically, and we all went through the same process. We can vouch for that sense and that kind of veiled threat that do it or we'll do it to you. Right. So I think there were some communities that took that to heart and merged under that assumption that if they didn't do it, it would happen anyway. I think they're nervous that there's going to be some reprisals from that, people saying, well, why are we now delaying these other folks? I know there's a perception amongst the agency and amongst certain legislators that some of these communities that are holding out, and they're viewed as not having done anything to comply with the law, which I will make it a point to correct that perception, because nothing could be further from the truth. And make sure that they know that if we took 18 months in committee to try to figure out the best plan forward to deliver education to our children, to turn around and expect us to implement a forced merger in the space of 3 months is just ridiculous. So.
Well, I know that you will be both positive and very adamant.
I will smile right through it.
No, I just think, as somebody who likes to do things thoroughly and well, no matter what, it's been very difficult to think about, well, okay, let's make sure everyone has health insurance next year. When can we do that? Well, we can't do it now because we have to wait.
Right.
So it's big things like paying people and making sure staff have health insurance. You can't do that in a hurry.
Right.
You can't do things, the schools will still be here, the children will come, teachers will teach them, but not if we're not able to be set up as a proper employer. And the other things we can work on afterwards, right? But you have to have policies in place. That doesn't take terribly long, but I'm starting to feel more and more concerned about how well we can do things in the time given us. Because rushing is typically not the best way to do things.
Haste makes waste.
Yes, yes, it does.
So we will keep our fingers crossed that our message is well received, and hopefully some people that might have been hesitant might gain a new perspective.
And so we have an organizational meeting scheduled for the 21st of March. Do you think we would have the information about a delay before that, potentially?
I would have thought we would have had information on the injunction prior to our last meeting, so I'm not a very good judge on.
You're not a betting man at this time?
I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic that we'll get things, and we seldom get them by the time I thought we would have, so.
Just for the board and the camera and community, we do have an organizational meeting. We opened it February 20th. It was postponed so that we could have an answer about the court decision, and it was postponed until 7 p.m. at MVU in the Trahan Theater on March 21st. We have a temporary presiding officer, and we would pick up where we left off at that time. And people need to know it is an important meeting, and the communities will be voting. The people present at the meeting will be the ones deciding when the school district would hold elections. Would it be on town meeting or a different day? How would those elections happen? Would we have Australian ballot, or would we have a town meeting style meeting? We would be voting on the clerk and the treasurer and a moderator for the school district, and deciding how much we were going to pay those officers as well as school board members, and also authorizing the new district to expend money and to borrow money if need be. So those are pretty big issues, and those will be happening potentially on the 21st.
Good job.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody?
Anything else under old business? Hearing none. Next item is new business. Town meeting updates and next steps for elections and budgeting.
I spoke a little bit about the bonds that happened. I'd love to hear from the various boards about how they thought their town meetings went, and if Highgate wanted to start.
Our town meeting went pretty smooth. We didn't have a budget to talk about, so our portion was pretty short. We did have a bond to talk about. We had our informational meeting for the bond the night before. We were hoping to get better attendance, which we did have very good attendance. The downfall to it is we weren't able to televise it. So probably in the future we would do it a little differently, but we learned from that. The bond itself passed, which we were really appreciative. Our buildings and grounds need some TLC. Meeting itself, I felt was pretty positive.
Yep.
So it went well.
Pretty sweet.
Because we had a lot of different issues about land and transfer and that sort of thing.
You know, a lot of confusion with the bond and how it'll play out through Act 46, whether we merge or don't, and kind of basically who has to pay the bill, and so. But like I said, I felt it went very well.
It was very well presented too.
Well, it has to have been, I mean, the informational meeting did a fabulous job.
Thank you.
And you had some tough
Both
questions. So I'm sure you did both, I know.
Leave Laura alone.
We had a little confusion over when it was starting, but we just went through it twice, so people really understood the information.
That's right.
It worked out good.
No, but there were tough questions and, you know, and they're not simple ones when you add in Act 46 and the, you know,
They were good questions.
yeah.
Yes.
There was a lot of confusion there from the town or people, and rightly so,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of confusion here about the Act 46.
That was good result. And Franklin?
Well, Franklin, as you were there and observed, it went very well, I thought. There was a lot of conversation around an article that was petitioned by the public to be included in our vote around the sale of the school property to the new unified school district. The bulk of our conversation was around that article, and I made it clear that if they voted in opposition of that, just that they were objecting to that sale, that they would be voting in the coming months on our articles of agreement that the committee came up with, and that in those articles of agreement, Article 6 is the sale of the school to the new unified district. And we had pointed out to them the importance of voting in favor of those articles and why, and that basically they would be countermanding the vote if they voted against the sale at town meeting. So it was understood that it was merely more of an opinion poll and a message than it was an enforceable article and anything that would have any long-lasting effect. And they did vote, I think it was 83 to 12 or something along that line, as being opposed to that sale. But we'll see how that plays out when it comes to the actual articles of agreement when we get to that point in time, if we get to that point in time. Other than that, again, not having a budget and no bond vote of any kind, it was pretty uneventful beyond that. And I think the conversation around that article was more information gathering and confusion more than there was no contention and no hostility of any kind, which can't be said for all of our meetings in the past.
Yeah.
I went to Sheldon after I left Franklin, and they were still doing town business till quite late. The only, their bond also passed handily. It was 171 to 71 against. So they passed their bond, and they didn't have any questions of school directors. Julia did a nice job giving an overview of where they were in terms of Act 46 and their support of the lawsuit and where that was. There were a couple of questions, but really that was about it for school business. So And did you attend the informational meeting in Swanton at all, Brett?
No, I didn't.
No. I understand that it was very similar, that they gave I had given Megan a latest update, talking points on Act 46, and they presented that. It was a pretty well-attended event, because it was a joint village, town, and the school presenting, and they had a chili cook-off as well beforehand to bring the people
That
in.
brought people in.
So they had a good conversation, and a lot of questions were asked.
There was low turnout for the vote, for town meeting day vote, but there were no school issues on it.
Right.
So there was no angry people there, so.
I understand that it was a very low number for a town meeting day election.
It was very, and I think it was the lack of the school issues.
Yeah.
Failed to bring the people out.
No. That's all, I mean, it was very weird to not have school budgets at town
It
meeting.
was.
And I can't say enough about the two towns who passed bonds, and both towns had questions of, well, it's very difficult to know how to vote when I don't have a budget that I'm looking at the same time. And the fact that people supported it despite that is just speaks volumes for their trust in the boards and in their schools.
And that was, I forgot who it was, also spoke of how to keep us going and.
You mean, they talked at our town meeting for us, at Lynn Calderwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came to the informational meeting, and then at town meeting day, got up and spoke on the bond's behalf, and I think that changed a lot of minds too.
Our attendance was down too, I think, because of that, but it was good. It was a positive turnout, really.
And I talked to that lady afterwards and thanked her for being so eloquent, her speech, and said that if she hadn't gone to the informational meeting, she was gonna vote no. She wanted money. But after she went to the informational meeting, she says, I learned a lot.
She told me the same.
Yeah, and so, I said, son of a gun. Did a good job, Chris.
Inform voters, how about that?
Yeah.
What a concept.
Isn't that nice?
It's a town meeting type thing instead of Australian ballot.
Just vote no because of
Well,
a
it's right
number,
there in front of you, that's
instead
why.
of going and learning about what it means, what's behind it.
Right.
Yeah, that's the meaning of
Well,
town meeting.
That's really nice, yes.
Do we have the numbers on the vote? Was that was an Australian ballot.
158 to 120,
So there was a lot.
and
well,
2 blanks.
I don't know how many you had at the information meeting,
Yeah.
but that was,
Not that
Not
many
that many.
people.
No, no, certainly not that
this
many.
town meeting, we had, what, 125 people or something?
158
Our
to
information was
20,
less
so
than 25.
Been
Yeah,
nice to
there
have
was
on.
280
So there was
votes,
still a lot.
2 blanks, 158 yes, 120 no.
And a lot of people that voted yes that didn't necessarily get informed, but.
And it was
That's
a good
true.
thing, 'cause it was our parking lot, and then they walked in where there was working on there.
I see you uncovered that just in time.
Well, that was uncovered over there.
It almost fell down, so we had to uncover it. but-
Tenny.
Yeah.
Yeah, necessary improvements.
Yeah, that was, we tried to fix one problem with the roof, and then it, stirred up a hornet's nest, and we found more problems.
Get it fixed now.
We're running out of Band-Aids.
Yeah, you can see it fall down,
Yeah.
poor kids.
So we definitely have a lot of next steps with the bonds and how, and to move forward with those, but we have to wait till the reconsideration period before we get moving. But it was very gratifying, very positive town meetings. I was just pleased to be able to go to 2 of them, and see what the town meetings were like in the different communities. Every town meeting I've ever been to has been very different from the next, so it's great, great opportunity.
Set for new business?
Yeah, just next steps for elections and budgeting. I mean, at this point, I put that on there because, again, I keep hoping we're gonna know a thing and what our next steps are gonna be. I keep hoping. I'm an optimist.
See?
Just copy and paste and keep it.
But I know that in terms, we will either be having local budget special meetings, or we'll be having a special merged meeting.
Right.
We'll know pretty soon, but those are the decisions we'll be making. And as I put in my letters in the town reports, and you all know, Bob and Chris will get appointed, if you're nice to them, by the rest of your boards.
We have to be nice to stay?
You have to be. Or maybe they'll do it as a punishment, I'm not sure.
Right?
I think we meant that they had to be nice to us, so we wouldn't.
Don't you worry, they'll be.
Right. It's a little quid pro quo. But you are gonna have to be appointed to the vacancies until we hold an election. And so whether that's a local budget election, if that's what we are doing because a delay happens, we'll likely have elections for vacant board meetings, member positions. So yes, David, that would be your opportunity.
To get on again.
Yeah.
To get back on again,
I'll nominate.
or
He
someone else
nominated
be
me twice.
nominated for that.
We have a quorum here tonight, let's do it, right?
That's right.
We
Let's do
probably,
it. He's
we
in.
probably could have
No, because I can't
appointed,
vote yet.
at the last meeting, we probably could have appointed in anticipation of this happening.
No, we looked into that. It has
Really?
to be, there has to be an actual vacancy, and then you appoint. So, just like when Ryan left, David was lucky enough to be appointed to that vacancy, but we couldn't have done it
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Only until March, no problem.
No problem.
Then he finds
Maybe
out.
it's May, we're not sure.
Yeah,
Maybe until
June.
June 30th.
What year?
One of
Then there was
those.
a 6-month audit period after that.
We didn't tell you what year either.
Had enough time off, 10 months or something, I don't.
We didn't
Nothing
say what
else
year.
to
I don't think it was
You
that
said
long.
June.
I don't think it was that long, yeah.
So the other, obviously, the other alternative is if there is a
Keeping them
merged
along.
budget and we don't have a delay, that we'd have a special election for
We just
the
keep him in
new
dark,
district,
yeah. Keep him in the
and
dark.
then separately an election for the new
Working so
budget.
far, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like
Keeping you in the
I'm
dark.
saying that a lot
Working so
lately in
far.
both scenarios, but it's so confusing, I think we
No,
keep
right.
showing up.
You almost had some wet papers there.
Yeah, that one almost went.
Sorry.
All right. Anything else under new business?
No, sir.
All right.
Not from me.
Darn good.
Next item, I guess, is future meeting dates. So,
Oh my
as
God.
always, has already been mentioned several times, that the next meeting regarding the Unified Union School District organizational meeting date will be March 21st, 2019 at 7 p.m.
I didn't put the next Franklin Northwest meeting up. I think partly because, I'm just gonna check my calendar here. We're not sure. If we have to merge, we would likely turn that into a transition board meeting instead. But it would be April 3rd.
So the April
You're
3rd
still
date
here.
may be a
April 3rd.
Franklin Northwest
I don't need to.
Supervisory Union Board meeting, or it may be
You gotta tell me
a
anyway.
A transition board
transitional
meeting.
board meeting.
Because we'd need to, if we do indeed have to merge by July 1, we'd have to take every date we could get
Right.
to put things together.
Right.
Board meetings.
Yeah.
And where will it be?
I have 4 next week.
Hmm.
I'm only doing
Next would be
This is my third.
Franklin, if we do a
2.
rotation.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Last week we had nothing.
Really?
Yeah. We skipped Sheldon.
And I
last
wanna,
week.
tomorrow
Oh,
night.
We
right.
wanna rub it in, and they weren't coming so much to
What
the
is it?
meeting, so,
Oh.
Would we be able to have
Tomorrow?
both
Was it about
meetings
the
same night,
property?
start with an SU meeting, so that we can approve our minutes and
Yes, we could probably do
any other
that.
business that,
Consider it's not right in front of my
if
house.
there's any other business.
Yeah.
That's a good
By
idea.
then, some people will
Shoreline property.
Yep, I would agree. Because the other folks would be interested parties anyway, they'd probably stay and,
Be more, you know. A good turnout, hopefully.
mm. So I just accidentally closed the agenda, so I don't
I don't think that was an
Uh,
accident.
motion to adjourn?
I don't think there was much else on there.
Julie shut it off, we're done.
Julie said, no.
8 o'clock was their timeline anyways, I
I
think.
think she did
But
that on
that
purpose.
was it.
Julie
The
shut
only
us
other
down.
piece was a possible executive
Right.
session,
But we
which we
can't
can't do.
Which we don't have a quorum.
We do not.
Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
I was just gonna say, how do we vote to get out of the meeting?
We're here
We
forever.
can just adjourn.
I will declare the meeting adjourned.
There we go.
Declare.
Declare.
At 7:59.
Isn't that we started,
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Before we-
what you can do is
Yeah.
declare it
I think we
adjourned.
started doing that
Declare.
when I got done,
Yeah.
Declare
yeah.
yourself out of
Tim would do
executive
that
session.
once in a while,
Yeah.
like
Declare.
that.
No, you can't. With all the business.
Just
being
declare.
conducted.